Hello, viewers. Today, Larry Johnson has joined our show. Larry, as you know, has become a rock star in the last 5 years or so in the field of geopolitics. He is a very knowledgeable person. Uh, he, he has worked in the agency, Central Intelligence Agency, in the start of his career, and he also worked as a business consultant. And he right now writes extensively in Sona21.com, and he also is a regular guest in Judge Napolitano's show. So, Larry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Vakas.
Thank you. Larry, we have a lot to discuss today, but I just want to kind of get your brief overview of this conflict, which is now going on for the last 1 month.
Yeah.
What is the current state of affairs between Iran and US?
Well, the United States started an unjust war of aggression along with Israel, launched a completely unprovoked, illegal, immoral attack on the people of Iran, and we now have discovered that Iran is not easy to defeat. And in fact, Iran has completely turned the tables on the West. Yeah, Iran suffered some, terrible damage and suffered loss of life, but the United States is demonstrating that both it and Israel have limited military power. Despite some of the technological advancements they have, they are incapable of stopping Iran from firing missiles, from destroying U.S. military bases, U.S. military infrastructure, and most importantly, being able to shut down the Strait of Hormuz and control the maritime traffic passing through there. Iran is now actually in the process of restructuring what we know as the Middle East or West Asia.
Larry, I want to touch upon this negotiation which is going on, it seems, in Islamabad, Pakistan. I follow a lot of local news media in Pakistan. They are giving impression that foreign ministers from Egypt, from Turkey, from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all gagging up here in Pakistan. And they are kind of giving an impression that there is a serious negotiation going on. I just saw Truth Social from President Donald Trump, in which he claims that there is a negotiated deal on the table, and we are very close to settling this conflict in Iran. But when we look at Iranian media, the picture is very different. They are saying that there is no negotiation, a serious negotiation going on. So what can you please explain what is the current state of affairs as far as these negotiations are going on?
Yeah, Pakistan's lying. Saudi's lying. Egypt's lying. They're all lying. Iran is not looking to negotiate. Iran, look. If somebody came in and raped your daughter, would you be interested in negotiating with the rapist? No, you'd kill the rapist. That's Iran. Iran has been raped. It has been assaulted, violated. Its children have been murdered. There's nothing to negotiate with the United States on other than the United States surrender. That's the only negotiation that Iran will be interested in, period. And this, I don't know why Pakistan is perpetuating this lie. Maybe they've been persuaded, being paid money and offered financial inducements to take this position to try to help calm the international markets. But the facts are what the facts are.
Yeah.
This was a violent act equivalent to a rape, is what the United States and Israel perpetrated on Iran. And Iran's not going to sit back and be the passive victim. Iran is standing up saying, no, we are going to eliminate the rapist.
Larry, I have a question about this concept of petrodollar. It's a lot in the news right now. So this is a three-pronged question, which is interrelated. So can you please explain to our audience what is actually petrodollar is?
Well,
How does it actually work? And are we in a moment that the US dollar hegemony is about to be significantly eroded?
yeah, back in 1972, when the U.S. dollar was pegged to the gold, you know, at the time it was like 35 or $42 an ounce. So if you no longer had faith or confidence in the U.S. paper dollar, you could say, "Hey, I want the gold. Give me the gold." Well, what happened was, as a consequence of the Vietnam War and the excessive spending, deficit spending by the United States back then, which was bad, but nothing compared to like what it is today. Oh my goodness. Back then I think the U.S. debt to GDP ratio was something like 35%. Oh my God, today it's over 130% or 120%. So in exchange, Henry Kissinger negotiated a deal with the Saudis saying, hey, look, going forward, we'll buy all of your oil with dollars. In fact, you sell all the oil you sell in dollars, and the dollar became, instead of getting gold, you would get oil, and the oil became the standard method of purchase was using the U.S. dollar. By having the petrodollar, the United States was able to persuade other countries to buy U.S. treasuries, and the United States, therefore, was essentially running up a credit card, but having other people buying up our debt. So we were taking money from Pakistan and from India and from Japan and from China, and that way the United States could do whatever it wanted. It didn't have to worry about paying the bills. I don't know if when you were in college, if you had a credit card, but you can imagine what you might have done if you didn't have to pay for that credit card. If your parents were saying, "Oh yeah, you go ahead, spend on whatever you want, we'll pay for it," you would have had a really good time, right? So, that's how the United States has operated. Well, now over the course of I think it really came to sharpen into clear focus with this special military operation in Ukraine, where the United States tried to use its control of the dollar as a weapon to punish both Russia and any other country that supported Russia. They were making threats against China. And so that was really the catalyst that brought Russia and China together to say, we've talked about BRICS in an alternative financial environment. Now we're going to get serious about it. We're going to create an alternative financial environment. And to that end, a number of countries have been offloading. They're no longer buying U.S. debt, they're selling it. And I guess one of the reasons that you've got the price of gold falling right now is that so many countries are out trying to sell gold to raise cash that you're flooding the market with supply. And that's been one of the things that's contributed to keeping the downward pressure on gold for right now, even though it's at a historic high. So the petrodollar is the last vestige of U.S. hegemony, U.S. ability to control the world. And that's what is now, basically, think of it this way. Previously, the United States could basically set the price of oil by controlling the dollar. Now who's setting the price of oil? That's Iran. Iran, by controlling 20% of the world output coming out through the Strait of Hormuz, is actually now controlling the dollar.
Larry, I want to talk a little bit about these Gulf countries. See, they have enjoyed a very luxurious last 50 years, as you just mentioned, from 1973 onwards. Their business model has been very lucrative. They have, called Bloomberg, luxury, airlines, beaches, very comfortable life. And I feel like this image has been shattered in the last month or so, especially Dubai and Abu Dhabi. What do you think is the likely future? Because these countries, I'm sorry, they are my co-religionists, and we are very close to as far as Pakistan and Middle East is concerned, but they have no significant military assets to bring to the table. So,
Right.
what is the likely future of these countries?
I mean, let's be honest and quite candid, particularly about the United Arab Emirates. They can't handle human shit. And you say, whoa, wait, that's a crude, harsh thing to say. No, I mean, honestly, those big, tall buildings, they pump water into them. They got toilets that flush, but they don't have sewer systems. The sewage is collected in the basements of these buildings and then hauled off in trunks, dumped I don't know where. But you say, wait a second, this, I lived in the wilds of Honduras back in 1978, and we had to take care of our needs to defecate by going to an outhouse. This is just, all Dubai's running as a modern outhouse. It's ridiculous. So what is being exposed now through the course of this war is how fragile, superficial, and irrelevant these countries really are. For example, Saudi Arabia, you look up, what's its population? Oh, 36 million. Oh. Except about 45% of those are foreigners who've been imported to conduct basically slave labor. They are there to wipe the asses of their Saudi monarchs. And they abuse, Filipinos, Indonesians, Malaysians, Vietnamese. People of Asia are treated like second-class citizens by these arrogant Bedouins. And just because they got lucky when oil was discovered, and then they acclaim themselves to be monarchs, oh, we're royalty. It's ridiculous. They don't have a political structure. What they have are family relationships and competitions. And the biggest group of freeloaders in the world. A lot of times we make fun of the British royal family, and it is worth making fun of because you've got these people who don't do anything other than, we won the lucky sperm race, and we were born into this particular family, so therefore we're special. Yeah, you got tons of these Saudi princes running around. But there is no political. They don't have a mandate. They don't even have a public they quote have to serve. They expect to be served by these people. So that entire mentality is so antithetical. The reality, there are two democratically elected governments in that area, Iraq and Iran. Everybody else is self-appointed. We were born in the right family, we're in charge. So what's happened now is a result of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The United Arab Emirates, 83% of its economy is frozen. You've got 25% of its income from oil exports. Well, nothing's been exported. It got another significant percentage from trade activities at Jebel Ali, which is a free trade port. That's dead. Nothing happening there. Real estate. They used to have booming real estate market. I think even Tucker Carlson was talking about buying something there. I think he's reconsidering his options. The foreigners who were, comprised about a significant, upwards of 80% of the population, maybe in the UAE, they're getting the hell out. They're not sticking around. You got all of these, sky-rise buildings that are largely uninhabited because there's no economic activity to sustain it. Real estate used to be a big driver of the economy. That's dead. So, now that Iran has retaliated against the UAE, and again, think back 6 weeks ago, The UAE and Saudi Arabia were talking about going to war with each other. Okay? They were threatening each other over what, one group was supporting, they supported different sides in Yemen. Well, now all of a sudden UAE and Saudi Arabia is like, oh, solidarity, brother. Yeah, we're going to go to war with Iran. And as you said, with what? I've seen these cats. They wear these pretty white leather sandals with gold on it, prancing around like a bunch of women. Not a masculine one in the group. And they're talking about going to war. Yeah, and I am being deliberately insulting of them. I think they're despicable. They are oppressive. Everything they accuse Iran of being, they are. In terms of repressing women, Iran's not running big prostitution rings like are being run out of Dubai, okay? So it's just, like the hypocrisy on it is off the charts. And so maybe this is God's way. Allah is visiting judgment upon these hypocrites.
Larry, I want to talk a little bit about southern Lebanon. We were told in just after October 2023 that IDF has completely wiped off the resistance in Lebanon and in Palestine. But suddenly, out of nowhere, this resistance has just sprang up, and they are giving a bloody good hiding to the Israeli military. So what's going on here? I mean,
okay, let me ask you a question. How old were you in 2006? So 20 years ago, how old were you?
I was, Larry, about 19 at that time.
So do you remember much at that time about the war in southern Lebanon?
Little bit. I was not very interested at that time.
And that's understandable. Most 17, 18, 19-year-olds, they're not paying much attention to global affairs. But Israel tried this once before, 20 years ago to be precise. And back then, they got their ass kicked. They wouldn't think, they don't look at Muslims. They don't look at particularly the Shia Muslims as human beings. They're like subhuman. It's like they treat them like, oh, we stepped in dog shit. I need to wipe it off my shoe. Well, that kind of arrogance got them into trouble, and they went into southern Lebanon in 2006, and they got beat. Compared to what happened then with what's happening now, Israel is being devastated. The Hezbollah in 2020 didn't destroy like 100 Israeli tanks, the Merkavas. They have now. They destroyed 21 in one day. And what Israel's not reporting are the casualties out of that. If you blow up a tank with an anti-tank missile, usually the crew doesn't walk away intact. At least one or two, if not all, are they're either killed or severely wounded. So just think, in just one day, 31 or 21, and the previous day they did like 8. So Israel's trying to drive this force in, thinking, we got armor, we wiped out Hezbollah. And it just goes to show how, again, their arrogance on the part of the Israelis, thinking that they've got this completely dominated. Yet we've already seen Israel cannot defeat Hamas. Hamas is a 35,000, maybe 30,000 man insurgent force. They don't have easily accessed lines of supply to be resupplied with weapons, with ammunition, with food for that matter. They're confined to what is the largest open-air concentration camp in the world, the Gaza Strip, 5 miles wide, 25 miles long. And yet, after 2.5 years, Israel, with 300,000 reservists surrounding it, have been unable to defeat them. And so now Israel wants to go into southern Lebanon and try to take up to the Litani River and defeat Hezbollah. There is, you can put it this way, justice is being visited upon the Zionists because they are being killed and wounded, and they're going to be forced to retreat.
Larry, one other aspect I think it's worth discussing is that to borrow the phrase from Sherlock Holmes, the dog that is not barking is
Uh-huh.
Russia.
Yeah.
Uh, what role Russia is currently playing in this conflict, Larry, and how is Russia benefiting out of this conflict? Vis-a-vis not only this Iran theater, but also in a Ukrainian theater, which I think it will going to boil up in the summers.
Well, yeah. So Russia has continued its offensive against Ukraine, and it continues to make advances and continues to demilitarize the Ukrainians. Ukraine has had some success the last couple of weeks with hitting Russian ports in the Baltic up around St. Petersburg that have, destroyed some of limited Russia's ability to export oil. But Russia at the same time is actively involved in supporting Iran with intelligence, with weapons. Before the war started, they had already provided them with 28 attack helicopters. They've provided some air defense assistance. I'm sure they're providing intelligence about what they understand the U.S. and Israel are planning to do, where key personnel and assets are located. And Iran is using that information to attack and destroy critical Israeli and U.S. assets.
Larry, I want to talk about this kind of logjam right now we are in, because it seems like Donald Trump and the U.S. Leadership, especially, they don't have any viable option left, because if they just walk away right now, it would be perceived throughout the world, and even in the United States also, it would be a humiliating defeat for them.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks as if the ground option to achieve the regime change would require a significant ground troops. Do you think that US can seriously escalate this war by putting ground troops and getting a regime change in Iran, or do you think it's just an unachievable dream?
Mission impossible. It can't be done. Look, and when I say that, people, you can say, well, okay, yeah, they could do it. They could do it if they would draft. The current size of the U.S. Army is about 450,000. So all they need to do is draft 2.6 million new fighters. Then you have to train them. And so already, if you're drafting that many people, and let's say on average, you're paying them, you got 2.5 million, and you're paying them $50,000 on average is the cost for training and equipping them, and that's probably pretty low. We're up into the billions, approaching trillion, 13 trillion, 1.3 trillion dollars, something like that. I mean, it's an enormous amount of money. And then, okay, let's say that you're able to recruit them, and you're able to get them trained. All right, how are you going to get them to Iran? You're going to put them on a ship, okay? And where's that ship going to sail? And at what point are you going to offload the troops? Are you going to sail them through the Red Sea? Seem to recall there's some folks there, and they're called the Houthis.
Yep.
And the Houthis got missiles and things that they could attack those ships. So the odds of the United States getting its personnel through there safely would be limited. I guess you could fly them on aircraft, but that's a lot of plane flights to haul 2.6 million soldiers to the front. When you consider that a C-17, which is a big aircraft, it can carry 104 troops that are fully loaded for combat. Well, okay, so it just gives you some idea about how big the number is at that point. And then once you get them on the ground, Okay, where are you going to put them so that they're not going to be attacked? It's just, it's ridiculous. You sit there and say, okay, because if you put them in Saudi Arabia or Jordan or Kuwait, they're going to be vulnerable to missile strikes. This is not like 23 years ago when the U.S. could build up its forces in Saudi Arabia. That was only 165,000. Okay, we're now talking millions, because you're going to need at least a 3-to-1 advantage in manpower over Iran, and Iran's got about 1 million troops between the IRGC and the regular army. I guess they call it Resh and
Besieged militia.
And the Basij militia as well. So, you're going to be at about 3 million. And where are you going to put them? And then, how are they going to invade? Well, they're going into a country that's as mountainous, at least in the western half, as Afghanistan. So, it's just, in theory, you can say, okay, this is what we're going to do. But man, you're looking at a year and a half project that's going to be terribly expensive. And then when you're done with it, there's no guarantee of success. So it's a fool's dream. And that's where what this has exposed is the limitation of the United States in being able to pursue war. This is the second time in less than a year that the U.S. has tried to use its military power and has failed. First was with the Houthis. Now it's with Iran.
So, Larry, I mean, all of these people who are currently in the intelligence business, especially in CIA and Mossad, don't you think they would have foreseen what could have happened in Iran? Why did they enter into this conflict with such, hubris and without any preparation?
I'm not laughing at you, my friend, but I admire your faith in human logic and reasoning. That you assume that there are some smart people who are sitting down saying, hey, if we're going to do this, what are the possible consequences? What should we be prepared to do if, because you're thinking perhaps like a chess player. You're thinking, I'm going to move a piece here. So what kind of options does my opponent have? What might they do in return? And if they do any one of these, what's going to be my response? The United States does not play chess. I think I'd like to, people say, oh, they play checkers. Even checkers require some strategic thinking. I think it's more like a game of darts, and darts are played popularly in England and Ireland, Scotland, where people are drinking large amounts of alcohol, are intoxicated, and God knows where the dart's going. That's the United States. Throwing darts while drunk.
It's a mess, right? Because especially for people from South Asia and third world, they are facing as John Mearsheimer is pointing out, they are facing a Titanic here, because if this war protracts and the oil increases to $150 per barrel, this would just tank all these countries, especially with food shortages, because the Strait of Hormuz also brings fertilizers. We are staring a disaster here, Larry.
Yeah. I was running the numbers to make sure I had it right. If you figure you mobilize 2.6 million troops at an average cost of $50,000, you're looking at $130 trillion, or maybe it's $13 trillion. I mean, the country would be bankrupted. So this is, Trump right now is trapped, because you're right. If he tries, he's not calling the shots. Iran is now. And look, Iran's suffering. They're having people killed, buildings destroyed, infrastructure destroyed. But I come back, and I don't mean to be crude But in using the analogy of a rapist, I know how I would react. If someone violated my child like that, I would do everything in my power to kill them. There would be no mercy. There would be no forgiveness. It would be their elimination. That is how Iran is thinking about this and approaching the situation. They have been repeatedly violated over the years, repeatedly attacked. The United States likes to say that Iran is the #1 sponsor of terrorism. Yet Iran is not providing financial support to any group that has been carrying out attacks inside the United States against the United States. The support provided to Hamas and Hezbollah, again, let's step back in. Probably the largest financial benefactor of Hamas was Israel. I said we are surrounded by such hypocrisy. It's staggering, and the West continues to lie and lie and lie about the reality of what's going on. So, in this regard, I think Iran's going to fight this as long as necessary. And it said, look, if we have to crash the world economy to get justice, we'll crash the world economy. Our people already are suffering. They have suffered enormous financial sacrifice. So if the rest of the world is going to stand by and do nothing while we are viciously attacked, then the rest of the world can burn with us. I don't blame them at all. Not at all. I think what they're doing is correct, and they've been the thrust of a vicious CIA campaign to discredit them and demonize them. You know what I think it really boils down to something as simple as Iran was one of the first, if not only country, I guess you could put Cuba in this class, but Iran had a popular revolution that was not carried out by some outside force. The Russians didn't cause it. It wasn't a Soviet effort. It wasn't the Chinese. It wasn't some foreign government that caused the people to rise up and throw out Reza Pahlavi, the Shah. It was a natural uprising, and the CIA was just totally furious about that, because we had worked long and hard to overthrow the other government, and now they've reversed our work. And to this day, we've, as I mentioned earlier, the only two governments in the region where the people selected their leaders are, in at least their political leaders, are Iran and Iraq. Now, it's true that the Islamic Republic portion, that they maintain some control that the elected leaders don't have control over. But my attitude is that's really the choice of the Iranian people. I'm not going to come to your house and tell you how you have to live with your family and how you need to conduct yourself. I'm an outsider. I need to mind my own damn business. I need to have the respect for you, that you're welcome to run your household as you see fit. And that, I believe, should be a foundation, really, of U.S. foreign policy, which it isn't. We're the meddling mother-in-law, where we're going to come in and tell you how to live, what you have to do, who you can talk to, what you can eat, what you can watch. And you know what? That attitude breeds rebellion. Because at some point people say, I'm tired of you telling me what to do. You have no power over me. And then when the pushback comes, the United States gets angry, but finds out it has limited power now to compel others to do what the United States wants.
Larry, just a final thought, because I want to give you my perspective also, because I grew up in Pakistan as a Sunni Muslim. Mm-hmm. And we were told repeatedly, especially from this Wahhabi and Deobandi sect of Islam, that these Shiites are heretics, and basically they are the cause of real trouble in the Muslim world. And initially, when I was young, I used to believe that rhetoric, but when I actually travel abroad and actually was able to think about these issues, I right now admit that the Shia Islam is far more modern, far more intellectual in its way of thinking, and I think that they are reaping the fruit of that thought and that hard work which has been gone through the centuries.
Yeah.
And I think Sunni Islam has to learn from Iran, because it has now become a beacon of independence in the Middle East. Iran.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look at here are the Saudis who are the so-called keepers of Islam, with the city of Mecca there. However, those Saudi leaders are whores, they're prostitutes. They've sold out Islam to the West and indulge all the sinful excesses that accompany a lot of the degeneracies of Western culture. The thing that is, as I've reflected upon this recently, you look back at the start of the Iraq-Iran war, where Iraq was encouraged by the West, by Jimmy Carter and his government, to attack Iran, in part to put pressure on Iran to give up the hostages. And then the United States escalated that by providing the precursor chemicals to Iraq to use to develop chemical weapons that were then employed against the Iranian military and Iranian people. And that's a weapon of mass destruction. And they used that weapon 20 times between August of 83 and August of 1988, so a total of 6 years. During that entire time, when Iran was being attacked with a chemical weapon that was supplied by the United States, Iran never built a chemical weapon, and they never used a chemical weapon. So oftentimes they're mischaracterized as an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But in this case, the reason Iran didn't do that it wasn't because they didn't have the technical expertise, scientific expertise to produce such weapons. They did. It was because of their theology, their religious belief, their commitment to the standards of Shia Islam, that it was to do so was a sin and it would be an affront to God. So I got to step back. You got to admire people like that in the face of evil, where they would have the chance to do the same back or worse, in a way that they followed the advice, the guidance of Jesus, the prophet, where he said, "Those who do evil to you, turn the other cheek." And in that particular case, they did. They said, "No, we're not going to respond in kind," and they didn't. And that to me is one of the defining characteristics of what sets Iran apart. As there are lots of countries that call themselves religious and claim to have, whether we're talking Jewish or Christian or Islam, but they actually lived it. They demonstrated it through their actions.
Larry, thank you so much for this session. I'm really grateful to you. You've got a lot of things, and inshallah, we'll probably be in touch in future also.
Well, I appreciate always our conversations. I learn from you as well, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
take care. You have a good day.